At 1600 hours on April 13, 2022, the guided missile cruiser Moskva was patrolling the Black Sea, roughly 120 kilometers south of Odessa. Displacing 12,490 tons, the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet was a floating fortress designed to annihilate aircraft carrier strike groups during the Cold War. Her decks bristled with 16 massive Vulkan anti-ship missiles, 64 S-300 long-range surface-to-air missiles, and a layered defense network intended to create an impenetrable dome of radar coverage spanning hundreds of kilometers. To the Russian Naval Command, the Moskva was invincible, a sheer mathematical impossibility for a country like Ukraine, which possessed exactly 0 operational warships, to threaten. But naval warfare is completely unforgiving to those who trust their armor more than their situational awareness. The Ukrainians were not preparing to fight the ship. They were preparing to blind it, exploiting a fatal flaw in how the cruiser processed the world around it. The trap began with a calculated distraction. At roughly 16 hours and 20 minutes, Ukrainian operators launched a Bayraktar TB2 drone into the stormy skies. The Bayraktar is a slow, prop-driven aircraft, moving at a mere 130 kilometers per hour. Against a Slava-class cruiser equipped with top-tier air defense tracking radars, sending a drone into its engagement envelope is usually the equivalent of shining a flashlight at a sniper in the dark. You are just giving them something easy to shoot at. However, the Ukrainians understood the exact psychology and procedural doctrine of the Russian radar operators sitting inside the Moskva's Combat Information Center. The drone was not there to attack. It was there to be loud, to demand attention, and to force the cruiser's primary tracking radars to look up and away from the horizon. While the drone loitered just outside the immediate kill zone, painting a bright, undeniable target on the operator's screens, the real threat was quietly spinning up its gyroscopes on the coastline. Hidden behind the coastal terrain near Odessa, a Ukrainian coastal defense battery prepared 2 R-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missiles. These weapons were domestically produced, derived from an old Soviet design, but heavily modernized with advanced active radar seekers and highly precise altimeters. Each missile carried a high-explosive fragmentation warhead weighing 150 kilograms, easily enough to gut the internal compartments of a major warship if it struck the right place. The tactical math was brutally simple. The Moskva had the radar power to see everything in the sky, but radar waves travel in straight lines, and the Earth is curved. This creates a geometric blind spot known as the radar horizon. If a missile flies high, the ship sees it from 100 kilometers away. If a missile drops down and skims the surface of the ocean, hiding in the curvature of the Earth and the clutter of the waves, the ship will not see it until it is far too late to react. At 16 hours and 35 minutes, the coastal battery received the precise firing coordinates, triangulated through a mix of drone telemetry and allied intelligence. 2 Neptune missiles roared out of their launch tubes, their solid rocket boosters kicking them high into the stormy air for just a few seconds before the main turbojet engines ignited. Almost immediately, the onboard flight computers commanded the missiles to dive. They dropped from the sky like hunting falcons, leveling out just 10 to 15 meters above the churning gray waves of the Black Sea. Now, the ticking clock began. Traveling at nearly 900 kilometers per hour, the 2 missiles had to cover over 100 kilometers of open ocean to reach the flagship. That meant the flight time would be approximately 8 minutes. For 8 agonizing minutes, the missiles flew completely blind, relying entirely on their inertial navigation systems to carry them to the absolute last known coordinates of the Russian cruiser. Aboard the Moskva, the crew remained entirely oblivious to the 2 guided bombs racing toward their port side. Their primary air search radar, a massive rotating array perched high on the ship's superstructure, was fixated on the Bayraktar drone dancing at the edge of their range. This is the inherent vulnerability of legacy defense systems. An operator can only process the threats presented on the glass screen in front of them. The sea state was incredibly rough that afternoon, with dense cloud cover, heavy rain, and chaotic waves exceeding 2 meters in height. For a radar system trying to separate the return signal of a small missile from the violent shifting walls of water beneath it, the environment was an absolute nightmare. The storm acted as a natural cloaking device, scattering the electromagnetic waves and burying the Neptune missiles deep inside the background noise. The cruiser was looking for a threat in the attic, while the actual killers were already sneaking through the flooded basement. With roughly 20 kilometers left to the target, the 2 Neptune missiles initiated their terminal attack phase. Their onboard active radar seekers snapped on, illuminating the massive steel broadside of the cruiser. At this range, the missiles dropped even lower, skimming a mere 3 to 5 meters above the wave crests. It was only in these final 90 seconds that the Moskva's automated point defense systems should have detected the inbound threats. The ship was equipped with 6 AK-630 close-in weapon systems, massive rotary cannons designed to throw a wall of depleted uranium at 5,000 rounds per minute to shred incoming missiles. But to fire, the system needs to know where to aim. Whether the radar operators were too distracted by the drone, or the ship's sensors were blinded by the storm and poor maintenance, the defensive guns remained completely silent. The math of submarine and missile intimidation had fully materialized. The ship had 0 seconds left to change its fate. At approximately 16 hours and 43 minutes, the first Neptune missile slammed into the port side of the Moskva, striking just above the waterline. Fractions of a second later, the second missile hit the same side, tearing into the ship's superstructure. The kinetic energy of the impacts alone was enough to buckle heavy steel plating, but it was the 150-kilogram warheads that delivered the fatal blow. The explosions ripped through the pressurized compartments, instantly severing main power lines and communication cables. To imagine the damage, picture a bank vault door being blown inward by a massive shaped charge, instantly vaporizing everything in the immediate corridor and turning bulkheads into lethal shrapnel. The port side of the 12,000-ton cruiser was suddenly wide open to the freezing, turbulent waters of the Black Sea. But the hole in the side of the ship was only the beginning of the nightmare. The real catastrophe was what those missiles had actually managed to hit inside. The Moskva was fundamentally designed around its offensive firepower, acting as a floating magazine packed to the brim with highly volatile munitions. The twin missile strikes ignited a massive, uncontrollable fire deep within the engineering and storage spaces. Thick, toxic black smoke immediately filled the passageways, trapping sailors and blinding the damage control teams desperately trying to reach the flooded compartments. The fire rapidly spread toward the secondary ammunition magazines. In naval damage control, a fire next to a magazine is the absolute worst-case scenario. It is a terrifying race against physics, trying to pump enough seawater onto the steel bulkheads to keep the stored explosives from reaching their critical ignition temperature. The crew of the flagship fought frantically in the dark, wading through rising, oily water while the ship began to take on a severe list to port. They were losing the battle against the flames, and the math of their survival was shrinking with every passing minute. At 18 hours and 0 minutes, the physics of the internal fires crossed a terminal threshold. The Moskva carried 64 massive surface-to-air missiles stored in vertical launch tubes directly adjacent to the main superstructure. When the localized temperatures breached the critical ignition point, the solid rocket fuel inside those dormant weapons began a catastrophic chain reaction. The process is known as a cook-off, a terrifying scenario where sealed munitions explode deep within the steel confines of the ship's armored hull. The resulting secondary detonations violently expanded the initial breach, tearing through transverse bulkheads designed to keep the flooding contained. Imagine a controlled demolition occurring inside a sealed pressure cooker. The blast waves ripped upward, buckling the main deck and destroying the remaining communication arrays. The 12,490-ton Leviathan was now completely dark, burning uncontrollably and rapidly losing buoyancy in the unforgiving, freezing swells of the Black Sea. By 20 hours and 15 minutes, the ship had adopted a 20-degree list to port, an angle that makes walking across a deck feel like climbing a cliff. The storm raging overhead had not subsided, hurling 3-meter waves against the exposed, burning hull. The flagship commanding officers faced an impossible equation. They could either keep their sailors inside a steel oven filled with detonating ordnance, or order an evacuation into a chaotic, freezing ocean in the dead of night. For a naval captain, abandoning a flagship is the ultimate failure, a choice made only when every mathematical variable guarantees total destruction. At approximately 20 hours and 30 minutes, the order was finally given to abandon the vessel. Neighboring Russian frigates and patrol boats navigated the hazardous waters, attempting to close the distance without being smashed against the cruiser. Hundreds of sailors jumped into the pitch-black water, relying on emergency life rafts as the raging fires illuminated the violent storm. When daylight finally broke on April 14th, the visual reality of the disaster was undeniable. Yet the official narrative from Moscow attempted to mathematically erase it. The Russian Ministry of Defense released a statement claiming that the cruiser had suffered an accidental ammunition explosion, that the crew had been fully evacuated, and that the ship remained entirely buoyant. They dispatched a fleet of heavy salvage tugboats from the port of Sevastopol, racing southward to secure towing cables to the heavily damaged bow. The goal was to drag the humiliated flagship back to a friendly harbor before satellite imagery could confirm the extent of the catastrophe. From a public relations standpoint, towing a burnt husk home is infinitely better than admitting a nation with no functional navy just sank your undisputed regional champion. For several hours, the tugboat strained against the heavy seas, pulling the listing, blackened hull at an agonizingly slow speed of perhaps 4 to 5 knots toward the safety of the Crimean Peninsula. But gravity and fluid dynamics do not care about military press releases or national pride. The Moskva had taken thousands of tons of seawater into its portside compartments, fundamentally destroying its center of gravity. At roughly 15 hours on April 14th, the storm intensified again, battering the compromised hull with renewed ferocity. The forward momentum of the towing operation was actually forcing more water through the gaping missile holes, accelerating the flooding process. The massive ship suddenly rolled sharply to port, snapping the heavy steel towing cables like fragile threads. Within minutes, the stern began to rise high into the air, exposing the massive bronze propellers before the entire 12,000-ton structure slid rapidly beneath the gray waves. In that precise moment, the Moskva secured its place in the history books. It became the largest operational warship to be sunk in naval combat since the Argentine cruiser General Belgrano went down during the Falklands War in 1982. The ocean swallowed the flagship, leaving nothing but scattered debris and an altered geopolitical reality. The Russian Navy had spent hundreds of millions of rubles operating a vessel designed to terrorize entire carrier strike groups, fully confident in its impenetrable defensive dome. Yet, that multi-layered radar network was systematically dismantled by a cheap, slow-moving drone that played on the human psychology of the operators, combined with 2 sea-skimming missiles that manipulated the physical curvature of the Earth. The Black Sea Fleet instantly lost its primary air defense umbrella, forcing surviving Russian vessels to retreat hundreds of kilometers away from the coastline to avoid suffering the exact same fate. A massive maritime blockade was broken not by an opposing fleet of equal tonnage, but by a handful of operators calculating angles, timing, and radar horizons from a muddy coastal bluff. They proved that in modern warfare, the biggest ship does not always win. The absolute smartest geometry does. The aftermath of the sinking sent a shockwave through the Russian naval command that went far beyond the loss of one vessel. The Moskva was not just a ship, it was a mobile air defense node carrying an S-300 system, providing an umbrella over the northwestern Black Sea. Every frigate and landing ship operating near the coast relied entirely on that cruiser to swat down aerial threats. The moment those propellers slipped beneath the waves, that invisible shield vanished. Russian admirals were staring at a terrifying new mathematical reality. If a 12,000-ton flagship with multiple tiers of radar defense could be gutted by 2 localized cruise missiles, the smaller ships in the flotilla were effectively floating targets. Within 24 hours, satellite intelligence revealed a massive withdrawal. The Black Sea Fleet pushed its operational boundary nearly 200 kilometers south, entirely abandoning their aggressive blockading positions near the vulnerable Ukrainian coastline. Retreating out of missile range did not solve the most sensitive problem resting at the ocean floor. The Moskva had gone down in roughly 50 meters of water, a depth shallow enough for deep diving teams to reach the wreck. Inside the sunken hull lay a treasure trove of highly classified cryptographic equipment and secure communication logs that Moscow absolutely could not let fall into foreign hands. For weeks after the sinking, specialized Russian rescue ships, including an operational catamaran built over a century ago in 1915, anchored directly over the coordinates of the wreck. They deployed miniature submersibles and remote-operated vehicles to scour the twisted steel. The recovery teams faced a brutal underwater environment, battling zero visibility, extreme currents, and the constant danger of unexploded ordnance shifting inside the flooded magazines. Every dive was a calculated gamble to extract sensitive technology without losing specialized personnel inside the collapsing superstructure of the sunken Leviathan. The ultimate legacy of the Neptune strike is how it fundamentally rewrote the established rules of modern naval warfare. For decades, military planners assumed that destroying a capital ship required attack submarines or a massive bomber strike. The Ukrainians dismantled that doctrine using a tiny fraction of the budget by pairing a slow distraction drone with 2 domestically produced sea-skimming missiles. They achieved a strategic victory that echoed globally. They proved that area denial does not require a massive navy. It only requires smart sensors, precise targeting data, and the discipline to exploit the psychological weaknesses of opposing radar operators. This single event served as a brutal wake-up call to every major navy on the planet. The age of the heavily armored dreadnought casually loitering near a hostile coastline is officially over. A new era of asymmetrical maritime conflict has begun, where the most dangerous threat to a massive warship is a silent equation waiting patiently below the radar horizon. The elimination of the Moskva created an immediate and glaring hole in the Russian defensive perimeter, specifically over a strategically vital outpost known as Snake Island. For months, the isolated rock served as a heavily garrisoned forward base, enforcing a suffocating blockade on commercial shipping. But the flagship was the only vessel capable of projecting a reliable anti-aircraft umbrella over that garrison. With the 12,000-ton cruiser sitting at the bottom of the sea, the calculus for the troops stranded on the island shifted from an absolute tactical advantage to a terrifying vulnerability. Ukrainian forces seized the opening, launching relentless aerial bombardments that the surviving Russian surface combatants were completely powerless to stop from a safe distance. Within weeks, the occupying forces were pushed into a total withdrawal, fundamentally shattering the naval blockade. This reopened a crucial maritime corridor, allowing millions of tons of trapped agricultural exports to finally reach the global market. A single missile strike broke the entire siege. Beyond the massive logistical failures and the geographical retreats, the psychological damage inflicted upon the Russian naval command was irreversible. The Black Sea Fleet had spent over 40 years cultivating a reputation of absolute regional dominance, projecting an image of untouchable steel and overwhelming firepower. In a matter of 8 minutes, 2 subsonic missiles shattered that carefully constructed illusion, proving that an incredibly expensive surface fleet could be systematically dismantled by a nation lacking a single operational frigate. The mathematical reality of modern naval deterrence had been permanently flipped. A warship commander can no longer rely on the sheer tonnage of their vessel or the theoretical range of their defensive radars to guarantee their survival against modern tactics. The Moskva sailed into the storm, assuming the old rules of engagement still applied, but it met an adversary who understood that a massive, top-tier radar network is completely useless if you can force it to look the wrong way at the exact right time.